I felt no remorse for my actions against my husband. As I adjusted my makeup in the restroom, my mind wandered to the possibilities awaiting me at my desk upon my return. No, it wasn't. I was aware of what was about to unfold. I found myself curious about the potential outcomes of the situation at hand. My boss rarely entrusted me with the responsibility of managing a large group, and I found myself questioning his reasoning behind expecting my agreement. Of course, I allowed him to share my bed despite being married, but does that truly make me unfaithful, or could it be seen differently? It seems to hinge on how one views the situation. I never thought of myself as someone who cheats, but I can assure you my husband would disagree. If he discovered the truth, I needed to ensure that he remained oblivious to it forever. Once upon a time, I lived a rather mundane life as a housewife and stay-at-home mom, caring for my little zoo. Then, the children matured, and all at once, I found myself in an empty nest. During the initial month, I found myself in a state of bliss. With no pressure and plenty of free time, I eventually found myself out of tasks to tackle around the house. I soon understood that a constant consumption of daytime soap operas would only lead to a foggy mind, so I decided to step away from my distractions and embark on a job search. I quickly understood that 2 decades of being a wife and mother at home hadn't equipped me with the skills needed for today's job market. Despite 2 weeks of relentless searching, I had yet to uncover anything. Indeed, there were positions available to me, such as working as a clerk during the night shift at a convenience store. However, I had absolutely no desire to be fiddling with shelves at 30 o'clock at night or cooking hamburgers. After dedicating 10 hours to responding to ads, I found myself with nothing to show for it. My husband was away once more, and I found myself lacking the enthusiasm to hurry back to a vacant home. I made a quick visit to the lounge for a refreshing drink. The drink multiplied into 3, and soon the waitress approached, informing me that a gentleman at the bar wished to treat me to another round. Are you familiar with him? Is he truly a gentleman, or is he merely seeking a fortunate opportunity? She chuckled and responded, I can't say much about the gentleman, my dear. He visits 2 or 3 times a week and has never been a source of trouble. That's all I can share about him. Convey my agreement to him. And here, I engaged in an action that was rather atypical for me and added, as long as he decides to accompany me. As the waitress walked away, I found myself pondering the reasons behind my actions. He was known as Bob, and the term that captured his essence most accurately was delightful. He had an agreeable look, a cheerful disposition, and was enjoyable to be around. Indeed, he lacked a reputation for being innovative. After exchanging names, he started, And what is a lovely girl like you doing by herself in a place like this? I nearly chuckled. However, as I had no desire to be approached, but rather sought companionship at the table, I conducted myself accordingly. We engaged in conversation and enjoyed a few more drinks as I shared the challenges and struggles of my job search. I understand how you feel. I'm facing the same challenges in finding someone to assist me as you are in your job search. I became alert at this sound, and he caught on and chuckled. I don't believe that's the case. You simply don't fit that mold. What leads you to that conclusion? We've only just crossed paths and you're not familiar with my story yet. I understand that you are in a committed relationship. How is that relevant? What is the task at hand? Supportive aid. I suppose you have a point. I haven't written anything since high school. Personal assistants do not engage in typing. I have assistants for that. What are the responsibilities of a personal assistant? Waits for me with impatience. She manages all the small details that can overwhelm an already hectic agenda. Follows closely, armed with a notepad and pen to jot down observations. Brings to mind scheduled commitments and gatherings. Ensures that my dry cleaning is sent out. Ensures that I keep track of significant birthdays and anniversaries. And attends to a myriad of other personal needs. It seems like that's exactly what I've been engaged in for the past 2 decades. Excited about the prospect of a family with 2 children and a partner. What is the compensation for that type of work? My previous assistant earned $80,000 annually until her husband compelled her to resign. What could drive a man to compel his wife to relinquish such a significant amount of money? That's greater than my husband's earnings. It seems he had some reservations about particular elements of her profession. She was indifferent to them, yet it seemed her marriage held such significance that she acquiesced to his wishes. Which elements of the role did he find unappealing? She accompanied me on business trips 3 or 4 times a month, and I sensed his frustration regarding some of the personal matters she needed to attend to. My husband is on the road much more frequently. He wouldn't even notice my absence since he'd be traveling as well. What personal aspects did her husband disapprove of? Honestly, I'm often quite occupied and don't have the luxury to engage in certain activities. One of the things Melissa accomplished was arranging to fulfill some of my personal wishes. Are you saying she set up intimate meetings for you? Have you discovered any women? At times. What does that signify? At times, she felt utterly alone. In an instant, his words resonated with me. Oh no. Did her husband discover it? No, he merely had his suspicions, yet that was sufficient to lead to her dismissal. Leave a high-paying job simply due to suspicion? If it were me, he certainly would have. I needed to be certain before I could let it go. At that point, it was the alcohol, not myself, that had voiced its thoughts. And when Bob asked, "You mean you could have accepted a position like that?" For that amount, immediately. All right, let's move on from the interview. What do you mean? My workspace is just across the street. I want to guide you there and share everything before you regain your composure and hesitate. It must have been the alcohol because I wasn't that type of woman, or at least I hadn't been prior to this. However, just 5 minutes after entering his office, we engaged in a sexual encounter. What struck me was the absence of guilt regarding my infidelity with my husband. Bob was the first man, apart from my husband, to share a bed with me since my wedding day nearly 21 years ago. It was the most authentic experience I'd ever encountered. When it concluded, he remarked, "That will be included in your responsibilities. Are you still interested in the position?" A mischievous spark flickered within me as I grinned and responded, "I'll take care of it, along with the cash, right?" "Absolutely. I am interested in the position." "All right, you've got the job." He rose to his feet, donned his trousers, and then reached for the phone. "I am prepared, Paul." He glanced over his shoulder, extending his hand toward me, offering assistance to rise. "Let's get moving, my dear. You're here, in the States, and there are so many adventures waiting for us." As we stepped out of the house, a sleek limousine awaited at the curb, with a uniformed chauffeur gracefully opening the back door for us. "Paul, meet Chrissy, my new assistant. Chrissy, meet Paul. You'll likely be spending quite a bit of time together moving forward. Share your address with Paul. However, my vehicle is parked in the lobby's parking area. I will ensure her well-being." It's unnecessary at this moment. Paul will collect you at 7 in the morning and return you home in the evening. I felt a twinge of surprise when he allowed Paul to leave as we arrived at my house. Bob caught sight of my expression. "So, you mentioned he was away, correct?" I nodded in agreement. "Excellent. This will allow me the opportunity to understand you more deeply." That evening, I found myself entangled with my boss once more, all the while managing my husband's late-night call. In the 4 hours since I met Bob, I found myself at a loss for words to describe the events that unfolded, yet I felt no guilt or remorse for my actions towards Glenn. Absolutely none. My affection for Glenn runs deep, and I would sacrifice everything for him if it ever came to that. However, I felt no embarrassment whatsoever about sharing a bed with Bob. The following morning, Paul was poised for Bob and me to depart the house at 6:45, and I received my jarring wake-up call en route to the office. Have you heard the adage that if something seems too perfect, It probably isn't. Securing a salary of $80,000 a year as Bob's assistant felt almost unreal. Bob mentioned that when Melissa departed, that was her salary. However, that figure encompassed the entire sum, factoring in bonuses, commissions, and several additional items such as clothing allowances and company credit cards. The actual paycheck amounted to $4,000 a month, which was still quite decent compensation. I dedicated a significant portion of the day to completing various forms for life and health insurance, along with a myriad of other tedious tasks. After that, I was introduced to Bob's secretary, who took the time to thoroughly explain my responsibilities as Bob's personal assistant. She remained silent on the topic of intimacy. Then, I was given a list along with 3 company credit cards and instructed to spend the remainder of the day purchasing everything on the list. It has been observed that these items will be necessary at some point. Then she presented me with another list. Prepare these items and have them ready for your journey, as there are occasions when you may need to leave town unexpectedly and won't have the opportunity to return home and pack. Upon reviewing both lists, I noticed that they primarily consisted of clothing items. Elegant evening gowns for formal occasions, tailored business attire, chic cocktail dresses, and similar styles. Make sure to have everything packed by tomorrow. Paul will take you for a ride. That was nearly half a year ago. And perhaps the most unexpected aspect of this role, considering how it began, was that Bob rarely required my intimate services. It primarily occurred during our business trips out of town. The intimacy experienced during those journeys was remarkably profound. Bob often had a desire to keep going all night, and we typically obliged. Occasionally, we would indulge in 2 martini dinners at home, which would sometimes lead to a night in the hotel room, though this was a rare occurrence, typically only when my husband was away on business. In that scenario, Bob would arrive at our home, engaging in intimacy, while I would be on an evening call with Glenn. For some reason, he derived immense satisfaction from it. I also did that, and it happened on Glenn's bed. Bob embraced a personal philosophy of diligent effort, followed by moments of leisure. His day began at 5:30 and wrapped up at 6 in the evening, unless there was dinner or a special occasion to attend. His belief was that if something couldn't be accomplished in a 12-hour day, it simply wasn't necessary. Yet, those 12-hour days continued without pause. Many evenings after Paul dropped me off, I found myself yearning to simply relax in the bathtub. My day usually began with Paul arriving to pick me up at 7. I possessed a cell phone number that was known to just one individual, Bob. From 7 to 5, he would call after 7, providing me with essential instructions to kick off the day. Schedule a meeting with so-and-so, ensuring it's before noon on Friday. The tailor is currently fitting my tuxedo. Contact them and inform them that I need it by 3 this afternoon and make arrangements for it to be picked up. Reach out to XYZ and inform him that I require his offer by noon today at the latest. Don't allow him to send it via messenger, go and collect it yourself. I have a meeting with Billings at 9:30 and I need him to be distracted, so please make sure to show plenty of leg while you take notes. A blouse featuring a slit could be a nice addition as well. Please ensure that my schedule is clear from 12:30 to 2 and arrange for a room at the Hilton. I intend to outmaneuver Billings in our negotiations, and you know how thrilled I become. What do you have in store for me? I reviewed my schedule. It's important to reach out to your sister and extend your warmest birthday wishes to her. Your annual physical is scheduled for tomorrow at 9 a.m., so please refrain from eating anything other than water after 6 p.m. and skip the grocery shopping. You made a commitment to Baxter to discuss his inventory issue today, and regardless of your feelings, you also assured your ex that you would talk to her about college plans for your daughters. I really can't stand hearing that person's name, much less engaging in conversation with her. I kept my word. I look forward to your arrival. What was Glenn's response to your new job? Astonished and bewildered captures it well. After 2 decades of hard work, Glenn finally reached an annual salary of $58,000. I'm departing from home and starting a new position that will have me earning nearly the same amount in just 6 months. Bob gave me a Christmas bonus of $10,000, and if I worked the entire year, I would make $5,000 more than Glenn. Glenn naturally was quite pleased with the additional funds as it enabled him to indulge. We enjoyed a comfortable life on his earnings, making my paycheck feel like a delightful bonus for him. We acquired a lakeside cabin, a boat complete with a trailer, and a Dodge Ram for towing, and began setting aside funds in a savings account. Glenn remains oblivious to my actions, convinced that he has a complete understanding of the situation. His superior has a helper, and he observes precisely what tasks she undertakes and the number of hours she dedicates to her work. However, Sarah, despite her beauty, is the type of individual who enjoys engaging in conversation. Glenn can't possibly envision a scenario where he and Ralph find a resolution. It simply doesn't cross his mind that I might be able to offer Bob more than what Sarah provides for Ralph. My work and travel hours don't concern him since he is often on the move himself. We consistently enjoyed our weekends together, and everything appeared to fall into place perfectly. Our intimate moments were extraordinary. The more intimate moments I shared with Bob, the more passionate I felt during my encounters with Glenn. When he inquired about the sudden surge in intensity, I explained how Bob had instructed me to dress and position myself to captivate the attention of the men he was engaging with, which left me feeling so heated and aroused that I needed to release that energy when I returned home to him. I never experienced any guilt or remorse for celebrating Glenn's achievements. It might have been a shortcoming in my nature. I adored Glenn completely and would abandon everything in an instant if it meant losing him, but right now I was simply enjoying myself too much. I would need to put in significant effort to ensure that Glenn never had any cause for suspicion, unlike Melissa's husband. Not long after the Christmas party, Bob inquired if I was interested in putting in some effort to retain a particular corporate client. I found myself pondering the timing of it all, questioning whether it would ever come to fruition, and reflecting on it frequently. Even without posing the question to Bob, I was already aware of the situation at hand. Melissa, his previous assistant, was earning significantly more than I am at present. He was curious to find out if I would consent to take on a single client. The company had previously informed me that Melissa earned a commission for ensuring certain clients were satisfied, and now it was my opportunity. I'd been contemplating the issue for quite some time and had nearly reached a conclusion about how I would respond if the question arose. What truly mattered was not the potential commission, but the essence of the work itself. I cherished my work and feared that declining would lead to my time there being limited. Bob's assistant handled various issues. This client posed a challenge, so the assistant would handle it accordingly. I inquired, with as much cheer as I could muster, about the time and place. This proved to be unexpectedly simple. Bob and I had lunch with the client at the Hilton Hotel. After a relaxed meal, enhanced by a few glasses of excellent wine, Bob stepped away to take some phone calls. I recommended that the customer head up to the company hospitality suite and wait for Bob there. 5 hours later, with a sense of guilt weighing on me, a well-experienced guilt, Paul drove me home. As I made my way home, I caught Paul's gaze from the back seat and pondered the grape grower's insights about him and Melissa, contemplating how I might navigate a similar scenario if it were to unfold. Paul possessed striking, good looks, and I found myself intrigued by the tales surrounding individuals like him. Following that day, I pondered whether another man might bring about a change. I attended to the client 3 times, and just as he was about to leave, the door to the room swung open, and Bob entered, undressing and approaching me. He left me utterly stunned by engaging in intimacy with me 3 times before finally releasing me. I discovered that what excited Bob the most was the idea of sloppy seconds. Following that initial experience, Bob requested my assistance with a specific account about twice a month, and naturally, I obliged. And after each occasion, Bob would enter the room and share an intimate moment with me. Once I inquired why he never engaged in intimacy with me after my morning encounter with Glenn. "You're aware of my principle regarding business, darling. Start your day with focus and dedication, setting aside personal pleasures for the hours ahead. Allow Glenn to share an intimate moment with you during lunch, and then join me afterward, and I will be more than willing to engage in the same." I pondered whether I could truly implement that. Bob possessed an additional allure that captivated me. He enjoyed being intimate with me during our business trips, even when I was on the phone with my husband back home. Initially, I felt a wave of anxiety that the bed springs might betray me, alerting Glenn to the unfolding situation. However, I overcame my fear and occasionally became quite assertive with Bob, expressing to Glenn just how much I cherished and longed for him. Then Bob moved forward. One evening while on a trip, I found myself attending to a client and Bob remained in the room with us. I found myself on my first date with two men, and it was a delightful experience. It filled me with an exhilarating sense of control, realizing that I had these two influential figures at my command, able to bend them to my will. In reality, it was entirely the contrary. They had the power to compel me to do anything. That night, as I called Glenn, I was engaged in an intimate encounter with two men. Following that night, there were numerous additional threesomes and a few foursomes all away from home, and I was genuinely eager for them. This evening promised to be unlike any other. This evening, I was prepared to embark on a pivotal journey. The event was an executive retreat featuring the majority of the company's senior officers, and Bob had requested my assistance as the hostess in the hospitality suite. It marked the inaugural occasion of engaging in play with my colleagues, those I interacted with regularly in the office. Until that moment, my interactions had been limited to customers or vendors, rather than individuals I engaged with regularly. The presence of 12 individuals would undoubtedly transform the essence of this night. With a final look at my lipstick, I pivoted and made my way back to my desk. And so it concludes. Join my channel for more content. Thank you very much.